back to another East County Voices. We're your hosts, Miss Patty, Carlos, and who do we got on the show tonight?
Well, tonight we have some amazing advocates joining us. I think one will join us later, and a few other hosts maybe want to hop on. But we have Miss Betty G in the house. Welcome, Betty.
Uh, okay. I
You're
thought,
all, we're live now, so
hi,
welcome.
Betty Gabaldon. I know I didn't want to put I don't know if I to put my full name there, but yes, Betty Gabaldon.
Okay. Well, welcome. Thank you for joining us. You know, so this is our little virtual community update, community happenings, community gripes, community concerns space. Because welcome, Eduardo. We're just talking about like the space, our little virtual community podcast that we've been doing now for over a year. Our team has grown, but it's important for us to just check in every now and then with different community advocates like yourselves, because I've seen you both go hard at city council meetings, at board of supervisors, and in different spaces fighting for the people. So in this space, we created this platform to give voice to the fights that we're all fighting for, and shed light on the reality of what's going on in our communities, because we have limited news outlets that really get down into what our family's going through. And then news outlets that are biased, that cover specific things, but won't cover things like all of the police atrocities that happen in our county. So this is why we have this space. Thank you both again for joining us and just shedding light on what's going on in your corner of the county. If I'm not mistaken, Contra Costa County, yes? Woo! Okay, East Coco. Okay, well, we could do some quick introductions. You all know me, Miss Patty G, homie, mother, friend, advocate, and definitely happy to be in community with you all. Don Carlos, you want to give yourself a quick little intro? I don't know
Yeah,
if y'all have met yet.
just advocate, chef. What else? Technical support,
Cameraman,
cameraman. That too. Yeah,
counselor,
yeah.
DJ,
DJ.
chef, all of it.
We have a DJ. We have a real DJ in the house.
We do. All right. Miss Betty, go ahead. Tell us a little bit about yourselves.
Um, should I just my brain just went blank right now. I have lived in Concord for 25 years. Um, so it's been a long time. In past 8 years, I had been advocating for tenant protections in Concord. I'm also a renter, single parent. My daughter goes to school here in Clayton Valley. She's also a sophomore. I'm actually very proud of her right now because like, she has grown so much, and I've seen like her also, like being a little activist now, goes to
Yeah.
the council and then did her speech, and then everybody was like really like, yeah, that was really good coming from a young person like herself, and also that made a video of how going through an eviction it was a big trauma for her. And then, when this happened, she was around 8 or 9, and she didn't realize how much this impacted her until now that she's a teenager, and she started talking about it. And I saw her like bawling out, right? Like this was like a very a traumatizing event for her. She thought that we were gonna like be on the streets. It's taking me a long time to find a place to live.
Yeah.
And right now that everything is so expensive, they ask for so many things, like making times the amount of rent. Who makes
Yeah.
$10,000 a month? Like that's
Yeah.
ridiculous. But
Yeah.
all of that, staying away from her friends, her school and everything. So sometimes we don't realize how all these events, impact our kids, our families.
Yeah.
We see them, they're like chiquitos, and we're thinking, oh, they're not really, they don't know what's going on, but they do. They do.
Mm, okay.
I'm just very proud of her right now. Like, she's going to be, I think she's going to be a great activist in the future. That's what I guess
Okay.
also yesterday, all those young people coming to city council, all high schoolers too. Most of them were, it was a hope, especially right now, what we're seeing in a country,
Yeah.
we feel
Yeah.
like defeated. And
Yeah.
seeing these young people, young faces, coming to city council, and some of them did speak up, did some public comment. That's I don't know. It was really moving. I don't.
So you're a mother, you're an activist, you're an advocate, you're a fighter, and an amazing role model. So thank you, Betty. And we'll talk more into like the traumas that we've experienced, because I feel a lot of what you're saying from when my family was like gentrified out of the increasing rents in the late 90s out of Silicon Valley, and just the stress of my family and having to relocate to a city like an hour and a half away, never been there, and it was just it was a shock. And then 9/11, and then my dad got affected with like his income at the time because he was working for United. It was a lot, but like those moments are traumatic. So thank you for sharing that, and we'll delve more into like our stories and what we're doing to fight and things like that as we continue on with these little intros. Frank, thank you for joining us. We're gonna introduce Eduardo Torres next. Tell us about yourself, and then we'll hop over to Frank and we'll talk about what's going on.
Thank you so much for having me here. My name is Edwardo Torres. I'm currently the Northern California Regional Coordinator for the statewide organization Tennis Together, a statewide coalition of member organizations that include some of the folks that were fighting on the ground in Concord, like Monument Impact, E-Base, Todos Santos Tenants Union, but also includes Oakland Tenants Union, LA Tenants Union. We're statewide, San Diego Tenants Union. And let's see, I'm 46 years old, I think. I'm forgetting. Yes. Yeah. So somebody said, "Oh, wait a minute, you're 47." Then they could be right.
Ya perdiste la cuenta.
Yeah. But I've lived in East County all of my life. I have lived in the community of the unincorporated community of West Pittsburgh, Bay Point all of my life. So I'm very familiar with East County and East County politics. I'm also currently an elected official in Bay Point. I'm a director for the Ambrose Recreation and Park District. I hold that position. Thank you. I'm entering my second term as a director in this community. And I'm also have been appointed through the Board of Supervisors to be on the Municipal Advisory Council of Bay Point. So I'm kind of busy, and I DJ too. I'm also a DJ.
Okay. Music is life, and that's amazing. I will definitely have some questions, like, because being in leadership positions, it's difficult. It's not for the weak to face and be in these spaces and speak for people and face these challenges. So we look forward to hearing more about the work that you're doing. Thank you for joining us. Don Frank, what's up, Frank? I heard you at the city council meeting last night. You dropped some fire.
Oh man, hey y'all, how you doing? I'm Frank Sterling, Antioch resident, member of Reimagine Antioch, and producer and host KPFA Full Circle. And I was just checking in tonight to see what you're all doing, and just kind of gonna sit in with you all. And yeah, I dipped in because they still got Maloney up there as a face of public trust in certain situations. So it was kind of hard to believe. And even though I was at home with terrible allergies, I had to get up and get dressed and go down there and make that comment, just because I can't believe they still, have him out there like that when our whole center of our protest back in 2020 or 2021 was no Malone. And now they just kind of
2020.
moved on. Yeah, now they just kind of moved on and just moved him into a position of in the face of the department at certain locales. So I don't know. I was very frustrated. I don't feel like I was 100% because I've been taking these allergy pills for 2 days and it was getting late and I was already in bed and I just got up just to go. But I felt it was important for the family of Luis Gongora Peck to know that we're still out here. We still remember, and we don't forget that he killed Luis and he quit his job because he didn't want to face his discipline, and then they hired him here. So I just wanted folk to remember that. And why is he up there as the face of public trust?
Absolutely. Yeah, Frank, thank you. Thank you. It's always a pleasure to have you as another host here. That was deep. And that's like the fight within us that it's a characteristic that I feel a lot of us advocates share, that if it's in us, and if we don't let this out, then it just sits there and nothing gets done. But we have enough fight in us to just get up and go and speak where and when we need to. Because yeah, you spoke for a lot of families. I remember we were out there protesting No Maloney. The family came out on BART all the way from South City, and it all fell on deaf ears. So we can do some quick community updates to spin off from that council, and then we'll talk all about what's going on in Concord, because we all have some kind of little history or fight that we fought in Concord. And especially with the recent, I remember things were going great. Concord led a big fight for housing justice, and Antioch looked up to that. But since these drastic changes and ripping away what the families fought for, I'm concerned that Antioch is going to follow suit because the leadership that we have there also. And so this is why we need to talk about this. In the city of Antioch, as Frank mentioned, like, they're putting these people that caused harm and trauma in our communities and families, yet they're being put in these positions, and it's a slap in the face. It's like if nothing, it's as if nothing ever happened. And I saw those pictures. I don't remember who sent them to me, but it was the pictures from the court where they had the big ass board blown up of Luis Gongora, and all the shot, he was shot in the back. Like, there was a lot of rounds, and I can't forget that image. He was homeless, yes. All he had was a knife, yet he got murdered, just like many other people and families and community members. And somehow the majority tends to be Black and brown people. It's sad. On the bright side, I saw we have new faces. There was a whole new hire of police officers. They all look young, professional. I love that they're not from Antioch. I think that might be my favorite part. What do you think, Frank? How do you feel about those?
Well, I mean, I always like to have this kind of layer of hope, but I always feel like I keep a little iron dome below that, because I feel like the police have never really lived up to being, I don't know. I don't want to say something out of place here, but I feel like they've never quite made it to what our hopes would be for them. And we always get our hopes dashed, but I do like that they're making some sort of effort after they got busted, and that I will again, put out like what I can is trying to make relationships with Chief V Hill, try and see what I could do to be
a bridge.
I don't know, what, some sort of bridge, or just some sort of like have this this trust and this faith for a moment, and then just see where it takes us, because we'll have to see how they handle upcoming events that are bound to happen, what kind of transparency they bring forth, if they use extreme force, deadly force, or violence on somebody, how they're going to justify it. And again, from the meeting from last night, it really frustrated me, because if they're trying to start this new department, and this guy Maloney basically he was cleared in any criminal conviction of killing Luis, but he did violate department policy, and his determination to violate that policy, that mistake he made, cost Luis his life. And his punishment from the department was going to be like a 2-week or a 30-day suspension, and that would be on his record as he violated department policy and he was disciplined in this way. But instead of accepting that and keeping his job, he quit. And so that really frustrates me that we would go and immediately hire him. I know this was years ago before we started our rebuilding project, but half our protest was really about Malone back then. I got signs in my garage that I made that said no Malone, and just I don't know. I could go on and on about it, but I feel like I just had to get up and do that for the family last night. Like you said, they came all the way out here for our protest and talked about Malone and brought their big banner with their loved one's picture on it. And they supported us when we needed. They spoke to the press about Antioch. And so anyways, yeah.
Well, thanks, Frank. You said, I think you mentioned something about the budget hearing. So policies and budget, in every city has them. There's policies, there's budgets, there's committees, and there's people making decisions for us. So this is why we need to continue showing up in those spaces. I don't know, Eduardo, did y'all hear and Betty, something happened in Antioch recently where there was a house developer that was, it's unfolding. We don't know all the details yet, but pretty much they were paying a bribe in cash in order to process their development contract or something at like a quicker pace, from my understanding. Is that right, Frank?
Yeah, basically they came with one of their coffee mugs that had the logo of their development on it, and inside it was like a jumbo tall. You pull off the lid, 5 G's in cash were inside. And this council member, who remains unnamed right now, played along, but then reported it to the FBI and then became an informant. And now there was the indictment came out yesterday. I can't remember their names right now, but it's a father and son business. Avion was Avion.
Genova.
They were doing the developments out here, and so we'll see who it was. Right now, we don't know if there was more people involved. They're an old company, so do we think this is the first time that they've done it? We don't know, but it's the first time they got caught. So now that the FBI and the DOJ or whoever is involved, hopefully they'll be looking into their past and how these developments. A lot could be read out of the Contra Costa Times and the Mercury News article about the attorneys saying that they're not representing the business. It was a personal thing. So they're trying to say the business is free and clear, but we'll see where the FBI heads with this investigation. But like you said, Miss Patty, there is really not a lot of information they're letting out of this developing story. So in the article in the Mercury News, they did confront Barbanica and Lori Ogerchuk. Barbanica would neither confirm or deny if he was the guy. He said he wouldn't comment on an ongoing investigation, but as it plays out, you'll get all the answers you want. That was what he said. Lori Ogerchuk denied anything and said, I don't even know who it was. I didn't even know about this till you told me about it. But she did note that those housing developers invited her out to talk about something with one of their developments and went out and had coffee with her. And they sat down, but there was nothing to it. So anyway, that was in the article today in the Contra Costa Times and the Mercury News. I would just say, just watch for this as it develops over this next weeks and months as the investigation starts to broaden. And like they did with the APD, it reached out to these different tentacles and touched the bribery with Pittsburgh, the bottles that they were offering people to pay off their citations, the college degrees, then bam, the text messages, And one last thing I'll say about this is that some of this investigation here on this bribery came out of the I'm forgetting her name right now, but the not the promoter, but the campaign coordinator that was coordinating for Barbanica.
out of Concord, right?
Yeah, so that lady's investigation where she got cleared in it, but the investigation led to this. So this is part. So these things extend out. So now we'll see where it goes from here. But yeah, if you can get a chance, check out the Mercury News and the Antioch City Council offered bribe article, and you can read it. They had the paywall lately, so I don't know. I actually signed up today and paid my $1.
I just canceled mine, but I'll re-sign up. They
I paid
have
my
good
$1
coverage.
today for a year's subscription, so it's only $1 for a year. But I guess they got to make money somehow. But anyways, yeah, you
most
can read that
definitely.
article and get all the information about it, and we'll keep an eye on that.
Most definitely. Thank you. So in Concord's known for a lot of developments. What's your experience out there, Eduardo and Betty, with like developments and developers and how they purchase, and is it for the people? Is it good? Like, has it been helpful?
I mean, I'll let Betty maybe chime in here, but I'll just say that, developing housing is always an argument that we hear against tenant protections about, like, we need more and more and more. That seems to be the common, I guess, argument against tenant protections, right? It's like, no, we need to build more housing, right? The problem is that they keep building market rate housing and not enough affordable housing, right? And so cities like like Concord, Clayton, San Ramon, et cetera, right? They're not building affordable housing unless I know they're doing it. But there's a state mandate that they should be doing it, and they're not doing it, right? But I don't personally have any, experience dealing with developers in Concord. But I know we know about developer money influencing council members. That we do know.
Okay.
Because that's public record.
Okay. Absolutely.
I'm with Eduardo on that. I'm not really haven't heard anything about developers. But I could tell you that there was for the AFFH something with the affordable housing. I mean, not even affordable housing. It was just rezoning areas in Concord, and we had a lot of NIMBYs coming to those meetings. And like Eduardo was saying, like, oh, people keeps, everybody keeps saying we need more housing because the housing crisis is because there's not enough housing and we just need to build more. But then again, when there's things like this happening, like rezoning some parts of Concord, so more, affordable housing can be built, we have all these people, these white folks coming there crying. And there was actually one teacher that lives in Concord and teaches in Bay Point. Right. I'm sorry. What I was going to say about name right now, but that she pissed me off so much because she's a teacher. She works, what she even said it. I work with the low income students, but she was not okay with building affordable housing in those areas. She didn't want that happen over here. So I'm like, so you go to Bay Point and be a teacher and you still come to this meeting crying and bitching you don't want this in your backyard. That was really, that pissed me off so much. That's one thing that has been happening in Concord. I think they're gonna come back with some studies and some new goals that they're talking about, but that's probably those talks are going to be around the summer, but we don't have anything with the developers yet. But that's all I know for right now. So there's more to come in the summer with that. It's not even developing yet. It's just rezoning those areas, and that's for that desegregating Concord.
And for our community out there that doesn't know, what would you tell them about what does rezoning mean?
So it's it was really hard. Like I wasn't really like into that, but that's what I was just, I went to some of those meetings. Rezoning meaning like they want those affluent areas, where all the majority of white folks live, to start developing, to start just rezoning. We're not even talking about building anything yet, but those places to start. I think for me, what it means, what I'm understanding that is So it could be a commercial place or whatever, and they could start building not just houses, but like it could be like a affordable housing. That's what I'm
Mhm.
understanding. It is. It's
Mhm.
complicated for me, but that's what that's EPHO was the one more into that fight, and I was just going to those meetings. I went to a couple of them, and that's when I one of those teachers, the one I just mentioned right now, was opposed to that plan. And
Mhm.
a lot of those sites were actually rejected, and city council had to come back. That's why I said next in the summer they're going to start talking about new zones, because the ones that they had already in mind, everybody was against those. Um,
Mm.
that's what I'm understanding, but I'm not
Mhm.
familiar with that.
Yeah, I mean,
It makes sense.
it's pretty much that, like taking suburban single family home neighborhoods that are zoned for that, opening it up a little bit more for like, multifamily unit housing. And that's where you start getting resistance, like Betty said, from people are like, wait a minute, are you saying
We
that
don't want these brown
yeah,
folks over here.
now that we have to live next to, affordable housing units or just apartments? Because, there's this classist mentality in this country that if you own
Mhm.
land, if you own property, if you own a house, that you're a hardworking American, right? And if you're a renter, it's because you haven't worked hard enough. It's because there's something wrong with you, right? And so
Mhm.
there's that classist mentality that comes along with, and that's obviously tied to racism, right? And systemic racism
Mhm.
that comes out when you start having these conversations about rezoning, because some people don't want like multifamily unit housing in their neighborhood because they're really just against poor people essentially. That's
Yeah,
why
yeah.
Not affordable was, I think you had to make like $70,000 a year,
it's
and that's not even affordable.
mm-mm. Yeah,
So
no,
people, yeah, it was just, it's really,
Yeah.
it's too much, because
It's
nobody makes
frustrating.
$70,000 a year.
yeah,
Nobody does.
Yeah. It reminds me of there was an era where, and I saw this in some coverage by uh it was a news network. They went to Antioch. They were covering. I saw Frank Sterling. I saw Catherine Wade, and they were fighting. They were fighting for justice back then, 2014, because they've been victims of the police bullshit for some time. But in that scene, there was a lot of Caucasian white women with signs um, fighting against having Section 8, which is affordable housing, in our community. And that was 20 years ago. Now it marinated over. And since I've never been, I never activated until well, kind of, sort of, for my raza in high school with we didn't cross the border crossed us back in like, I don't know, 2004 or something. Um, and we could talk about our activism and what motivated us to activate and speak up. We can get into that next. But I do want to note that those people, that language has marinated into in 2020, that I would see online on these blog outlets, the hateful, classist language about, oh, they're not from here. This is our town. They had a campaign, we want our town back, and oh, Section 8, and
Yeah.
Oakland 2.0, and AKA black and brown people coming into the
Yeah.
community. And so, yeah, it's sickening that that they hate the thought of, yeah, we're here and we're here to stay. We're not going anywhere. We are sitting on stolen land. Frank can tell us all about that.
yeah.
Um, but
I mean, housing
yeah,
is very tied to racism, and I think that's where sometimes people forget, especially council members who are people of color, right, and their positions of power to actually help, affected communities. They don't see the tie between racism and housing practices in this country, right? Like who had access to land, who had access to housing. All of those things were tied to racist institutions, racist laws that existed up until probably the 60s, right? And they still were practiced for many decades afterwards. In fact, I've been with tenants together for almost a decade. And in the time I've been here, they passed a law, the state law, that prohibits Section 8 discrimination, right? Why that happened? Because people were discriminating on the fact that, you know, you were a poor person, right? And so now you can't see that on ads anymore. If you see that, by the way, if anyone sees no Section 8, report them. They're not supposed to do that. You can go to the state, the attorney general, and report them, or you could kindly, you know, give them a heads up, like you can't do that, and see what they do. But like that's illegal. But like my point is that, you know, we forget, like, you know, redlining, right? White flight, you know, urban renewal. All these things that have happened that have demolished our communities have been tied to racism and classism. In a lot of part, right? Like indigenous people got their land stolen, then African American people couldn't buy land, they couldn't even vote, right? Chinese Exclusion Act, couldn't buy land, right? Like list goes on and on and on.
African American veterans went to the war, fought, willing to risk their lives, came back and couldn't use their VA home loan because of the discrimination.
Right.
Indeed.
And totally. And because of racial covenants, because all these things that existed. So here we are talking about housing in 2025, and it's still tied to racism, and people still don't understand that. Like, of course it is. This historically has always been tied to racism. And so I remember that wave in Antioch where you're mentioning when they started applying for Section 8. I remember that. And I also remember the city of Antioch growing too much too fast. And so they had a lot of housing that they couldn't fill up. And so they had to bring people in. I thought it was a good idea to diversify the city, to be quite honest with you. I've been in these kind of, like I mentioned, all my life. And historically, Antioch has been a white town, white city, and it was a sundown town, right? We know that. But like it was good news for me. Like, hey, let's diversify East County. I love that. But
yay, and we did it.
Right. But like it was met with resistance. It was met with racist dog whistles, right? With classist attitudes, and all of a sudden that part of town is ghetto. When people start mentioning areas like our ghetto, I'm like, they're really just being racist. It's like, how's Antioch ghetto? I still don't understand that when people say that. I'm like, wow, where? Like, what are you talking about?
No, for sure. ¿Qué más? I had a thought. Oh, yeah. So we talk about policies. We talk about decisions that council members make. We talk about the importance to vote for folks that you believe will fight for what you believe in. And so in Antioch, there was an era where we had a 3-majority progressive folks that fully supported. Well, it took some time, but anti-harassment, rent cap, and what was the third one? We try to mirror what Concord did, because Concord led that fight years ago, and Antioch followed suit.
The other one was just cause for eviction.
That's the one. Because there were homeowners that were evicting families just because. And this wasn't fair for families. Even going down to the policies of saying, well, they can't do it during a school year. Like, it went on, but Antioch won and we got it. But there were 2 members on the council administration in that time, Mike Barbanica and Lori Ogerchuk, that were resistant against these protections for tenants. But they also were real estate property manager business owners. So when we vote and we get to know our potential leadership, you know, it's good to look at, well, what are their background? Is it business oriented? Is it people oriented? What is it? Is it climate oriented? You know, so that's a right that we all have. I wish that immigrants or non-citizens could vote, because they pay taxes here too. But that would be a big fight. But at the same time, many people out there don't exercise that right that people fought for, people died for. Women weren't able to vote. African Americans weren't. There was a lot of people that weren't able to vote, but they had to pass these articles to make sure that, yeah, we can vote. So people out there, go vote, go do your research, pay attention, and be part of these decision-making spaces, because otherwise you have electeds that will fight up against and put profit over people. And so, and we're not here to like drag any politicians or spread misinformation like through the dirt. We're here to talk about what has happened, what is happening, and what is going to happen if we don't speak up. So, yeah, thank you all for.
I
I
like
mean,
that,
what's it
that
been
you
like?
just said that, Patty. I think one of the we have here in Concord, we started this is our third year doing a leadership institute with tenants in Concord. Most of them are undocumented people,
Mm, mhm,
and even though we know that they cannot vote, there's another other ways they can get involved, right? So this is what we tell them also. Even if you cannot vote, there are other ways for you to get involved. Pass
mm,
information to your, to your neighbors. Talk to your
mm,
neighbors. Talk to your friends.
mm,
When there's like a candidate, like for example, right now with Pablo Benavente, there were so many people that fell for, him being, a Hispanic, que habla español, and then because he's gay and all of that, people thought that he was a progressive candidate. He also was, the with monument impact.
mm.
And so there were so many things that people were just hearing, but they were really not in, they just trust that. Like, oh, él
Mhm.
va a estar de nuestro lado because he's also Latino and Mexicano and all
Was he
that.
was he a guest speaker at the galas?
Yes, he was.
Okay, that name rings a
He
bell.
was.
Okay.
People needs to be. That's what we tell them. Even if you cannot vote, you can still talk to your neighbors, and we have them, get we help them do public comments. Public speaking, going door knocking, passing information to their neighbors about their rights.
Mm,
Um,
mm,
and it's really important. We also do, we started this year, last year, and this year we started doing a civil engagement for them to
mm,
understand how the government works, because a lot of
mm,
them, they think, and I'm not just saying them, but I'm saying them right now because that's what I'm working with. They start saying, oh, todas estas ayudas, they keep saying ayudas. It's like, it's not an ayuda. It's not the government that comes and say, oh, I just want to do it from the bottom of my heart. I want to I want you guys to have this, this benefit. It's because there's people behind us that had already fought for them, right? So
yes.
we want them to understand this, and that's, like for example, for these tenant protections, it's not because the city council sat there and said, hey, maybe these tenants need some help. Maybe their rents are going too high. Let's put some, a rent cap to that. It wasn't because of them doing that. It was because long years of fighting, right? So we want them to understand that everything comes, for being involved. Civil engagement is really, really important, and our people needs to know that. And that we
Yeah.
want to do the same thing with the youth, like young people. They need to understand that how important it is to be, participating on this. I think that's what's going to help people to be more involved, because yeah, you're right, a lot of people do not vote. They think that their vote is not going to matter, but they don't go to city council. They're not really involved in all of that, but this is how it all starts,
Yes. Yes. I love that. And if the youth group that you're working with, if they ever want to join a youth podcast here, we'd love to hear from the youth perspective and what activated them and what they hope to get out of their activism, because the youth is our future.
Yeah,
We were
no,
youth
we haven't
once.
started with that yet, but in the future we're planning on doing that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. ¿Qué más? Yeah, that's why we have this platform, right? To talk about the reality, the fights, what we need to do to organize. Because if we're just chilling, thinking, oh, everything's going to be good. No, decisions end up happening without the people's knowledge. They will have these hearings. For instance, we had a budget hearing in the city of Antioch that happened early in the day. What does that mean? It wasn't accessible. People are working, couldn't participate. Last minute notice. So we do need to be on top of it where we can, when we can.
And Franklin here. I'll just add real quick. I tuned into a great another podcast this week. I don't know how many of you listened to the old school guy, Ralph Nader, and the Ralph Nader Radio Hour. But this week he talked about civic self-respect and how you contribute to your community and your society as a citizen, a voter, a worker, a taxpayer, a consumer, a parent, and how we give back to our society through our civic engagement. And so, it was a great interview. If anybody wants to check it out, just check out the Ralph Nader Radio Hour. I think he does a podcast, or you could search for it on KPFA Radio. That's where I heard it.
Send us the link. We'll put it on East County Voices Facebook.
Definitely, yeah. And he was talking about it today, and really, he just he released his latest book, and it's called Civic Self-Respect. And it's all about how to get in where you fit in, and how to use your power as a citizen, as a consumer, putting your money where your beliefs are and stuff like that. So anyways, I just wanted to throw it out there because I heard a lot of what you all were saying in the podcast. So it reminded me of it, and I looked it up. Yeah, check it out if you can. I'll get the link. The book is called Civic Self-Respect.
I love it. And so then with what's going on in Concord, I know Concord fought for like 10 plus years to have those protections. And thank you, Frank. Hell yes, knowledge is power. Send us the link, and we need to put that on our page so folks can maybe wake up a little bit. But in Concord, we looked up to that because it happened. Then I feel fearful for our little community because if I'm not mistaken, correct me if I'm wrong, there was all three. But I saw on Monument Impact's page and Fame's and how things were undone. Like things were voted, things were in place, but from my understanding, some of those policies were like stripped or weakened, or what happened?
No. I'll just before we get into that, I really want to give some context to folks.
Yes.
Because this fight that I personally have been involved in started in 2016. And that started with a rent strike that was led by Betty and her neighbors.
Woo, Betty!
Yeah.
Thanks to Eduardo that he came and helped us to get organized.
Eduardo! Okay.
We literally met at the beginning of my career at TENS together, and we've been stuck to the hip ever since in Concord. But I think it's important to name that because I think just to give some context of how long we've been fighting, right? Like when Betty and her neighbors were fighting and organizing the rent strike, it was because of bad conditions they were living in. Their property manager was harassing them. He was being racist, and they're living with bed bugs, cockroaches, you name it, all sorts of really bad conditions in the apartment building that should not be existing, right? And we went to the city. The tenants wanted to go to the city. I said, let's go to the city, and they, brought their complaints to the city while the rent strike was happening, because obviously that started getting a lot of attention, right? When a group of neighbors and tenants start organizing and withhold their rent, people are like, what's going on? And in this climate of the housing crisis getting worse at that time, right? This is really at the peak of when things started, we started really seeing it, right? We knew it was happening, but we really started naming it in this area till around those years. It was already happening in San Francisco and other areas, but gentrification was definitely creeping in the Monument. And so based on those actions, more neighbors organized, and we started taking these issues to the city, and the city was forced to actually have these conversations. Had it not been for Betty and her neighbors and the other tenants in that little corridor of Monument, most of who were Spanish-speaking monolingual tenants, If it wasn't for their courage to go to the city to say, hey, there's a problem here, we need protections, we wouldn't have gotten where we're at. But it was a long process to get there because that city council at the time was very conservative. You had Tim Grayson, everybody's favorite Tim Grayson. Hey, we love Tim Grayson. I have a personal opinion about that fool, but he was on the council. He was a mayor at that time, so he didn't do anything for us. And we had other council members that were very conservative, and so that took a long time to actually get to the point. The only one who was like on the tenant side at that time was Eddie Person. So it was always a 1-4 vote when it came to actually trying to
Dang, so he's been around for a while.
Yeah, and he was there.
Okay, Eddie.
Yeah, Eddie was probably there a little bit longer than that too. I don't think he was new at that time. He had been there for a while. But it did take a lot of continuing organizing, continuing building the base to get to the point where the city council, after unseating a council member, because again, he wasn't doing anything for us, even though he talked a big game, Tim McGallion, he talked a big game and he was like, oh yeah, I'm going to help y'all. Like we're going to do something, but he never did. But other issues came up. And so he got unseated and that was to our benefit. So we had a new city council member that was going to give us that third vote we finally needed. And so it was finally passed last year through the efforts of Raise the Roof, Todos Santos Tenants Union, eBase, the coalition Raise the Roof, eBase, which is eBase, and a lot of these organizations like Monument Impact. And so that finally passed last year. So, but Betty has probably a lot more to say in detail than I can at this point, but I just want to give some context of how long that took to get there for one pentonto to just show up and immediately just start pulling that thing apart that we fought so hard for, and that was going to help a lot of people in the community he supposedly cares about.
Yeah.
That's
And
sad.
also, I also want to add that it was not, it was also, like Edwardo mentioned, the new city council member that has been on our side since 2023, I think. Right, that's when she got elected, right? She started
Laura Nakamura.
Laura Nakamura.
Yeah, that's right.
But it was also the housing element that helped us there, because council, they needed to have tenant protections in there. So that also helped us. It's really complicated, the housing element. Good thing we have this researcher that helped us along the way, to not really understand what, how the housing element, but I think it's done every 10 years or something like that.
And it's required by the state. It's required by the state too.
It's required by the state, so it requires for all the cities to have something in place for housing, right? Like for housing. So that also helped us too. So it was the housing element in Laura Nakamura having 3 council members, because this whole time it was only 2 to 3 the votes. So that was our third vote. And then we finally, after all those years, we were able to, to pass this tenant protections. Was the rent cap, the rent increases were capped to 3% or 60% of the CPI, which translates to 2.5%, and it's only like $50 that it depends on your rent, but it was around $50-$60 that people were getting on the rent increases. And there was also a rollback, people that got rent increases during the time that this whole thing was going on, because it took like almost a year for them to finally, make that vote. So it rolled back to April 2023. So a lot of people that got rent increases, and in between those months, were able to for the rent to roll back to whatever they were paying back then in 2023. But it's been hard because people, the landlords, they don't comply with the law. They were still not, just saying that there was a lie, that was not in effect. There were so many things. City staff took 7 months to put someone in place, like a hearing officer. So there was really no process, nowhere to go, no entity to go. Like to, actually like help tenants, like, hey, this is going on. My rent has not gone down. I got a 5%. I mean, more than the allowable rent increase. So there were so many things happening during those months. That's why it was, when Pablo Benavente got elected, and 2 months right after that, he decided to bring this to, for a review. That, yes, it is true that it was supposed to be reviewed every year. That's the first thing he did. And then we find out that it's because he was paid money by the biggest landlord in Concord. I mean, the owner of Azona and his affiliates paid him money to his campaign. So it's no surprise that he brought this up for a review 10 months after that, without having any data, without anything. He just decided to bring this up. And not only that, but he wanted to, he even said it, and that pissed me off because he said it in Spanish. I don't know why he thought it was gonna be a good idea to set that. There were so many people there that got so upset just by him doing that, because the first thing he said, I came here trying to change. I heard to all my constituents, and renters, and people that I door knocked, and blah 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 blah, all this stuff. And I came here trying to align with the same, the 10% that the state allows. But I'm so good that I'm just gonna go for a 7% rent increase. So that pissed me off so much more. It's like, how people are struggling right now. You already know that you were part of Monument Impact all this whole time. You knew that people are struggling. You knew the fight that all these tenants did for 8 years, 10 years now. And I feel that Hofmeister, I mean not Hofmeister, Obringer, the mayor, she saw an opportunity and she took it. She just keeps saying that she didn't get any money on her campaign from the apartment associations. I mean the California Apartment Association, but she's still aligning with their agenda.
Yeah. And we don't know what's going on behind the scenes either, because like in Antioch, these people would organize behind the scenes at their barbecues and these gatherings. And
Well, they send a lot of flyers in her district, with a lot of misinformation to homeowners. And also when she says that she talks to all her neighbors, people at her church, and I don't know, some dumb shit that she said last night, something like the dumpster. I couldn't understand exactly that dumpster stuff. But anyhow, when she says that, all of her neighbors, and she knows this, most of those people, they got misinformation from the California Apartment Association's flyers that they kept passing around. So, and she knows that. So for her to say completely ignore that part, it's, to me, it's just, she just saw an opportunity to go ahead and say, look, I'm better than Pablo because he wanted a 7% and I just wanted a 5% flat. It's not attached to the CPI, so everybody's rent increases are gonna double now.
Yeah, I think too what was troubling about all this whole process was that for all these years that we had gone to city council meetings, for all these years, and for all the resistance we got over the years from the council, from the staff, they kept demanding more data. All of them. Well, I would say, Eddie Brisson was always probably kind of like, I don't need to hear it. I know it. I see it, right? But like most of the city council members over the years and the staff have always said, we need more data. We need more data. When we need more data. Well, this ordinance wasn't even 10 months in, and they already started dismantling it without data, without this ordinance actually even working. And so, yes, that's so shiesty that Pablo immediately goes after this, knowing that there's no data to prove any of what he's saying is why he's doing this, and still make that decision. Like as an elected official myself personally, and I've said this to him in council, I would never ever make an uninformed decision. Period. I don't know most politicians that I do know that I have good relationships with, which isn't many, but I feel like they also agree. They would agree that they would not make an uninformed decision. Whatever the decision may be made, It's based on information. It's based on data. We've collected enough info to say maybe, you know what, this 3% is a little bit too much because maybe we got 100, like landlords who filed like for, for assistance, right? Which isn't going to happen ever because that they hardly ever use that, right? But say for instance, if he had that piece of data to say like we've lost this whatever, right? You can at least make an argument, but he doesn't even have that. He was just pulling things out of thin air, which is again was very frustrating for many of us who know the real story. We know there's real stories because of the tenants we work with, right? And his argument just didn't have any foundation behind it. It didn't have any real substance.
Yeah, I mean, so all these years, they kept saying, we need more studies. We need more studies, not just the data. We need to study this more. We need to study this more. Even Hofmeister said that so many times. She didn't feel it in her heart because there's needed to be studies, like hundreds of tenant stories. Years after year after year. That was not enough for them. But 2 months come, and then just hear, that bitching and crying of these homeowners that it didn't even apply. This didn't even apply to them because they were not renting their homes. They're just homeowners. All of these people came in just those not even 2 months. And all of a sudden, you don't need studies, you don't need data, you don't need anything. And they just decided to make these changes to the ordinance that that for years, it took years of hundreds of people being displaced. It's just
No, we can't
I don't
allow
have the
what
words for that
happened.
right now.
We can't allow that continuance of the trauma and relocating families unjustly. But there was times I showed up to a few actions in Concord a couple years ago, and I must say, like the folks, the homeowners associations and their people, they were very aggressive and way more aggressive than the Antioch resistance against our police accountability. I was like, oh my God, I was a little scared. I'm not going to lie. One lady, she went up to me, she walked past me and said, speak English. And she said that to me. And I was like, what the fuck?
In
Like,
Concord? That happened in Concord?
yes, yes, yes. So, kudos to you all for continuing this big fight that you've been doing and this fight up ahead. Um, what can I'll ask you guys, like, what can the community do to help this cause? And then we could do a round robin of what motivates us for these fights. So what can the community do? If anybody's out there listening that can help this cause for a fight to fair tenant protections and not being undone?
For me, it will be to really start finding our people, to be in those positions. We can't rely on
Okay.
politicians. We can't just
I like
wait there,
it.
rely on these politicians. We
I
really
love
need
it.
people, and to be in those positions of power.
That's
And
solid.
also, we need to also we really need to start looking for those our people that are going to represent us. Not
Okay.
another.
That's fair.
Yeah, I would add that, like I'm an elected official because I was upset that we weren't getting the representation we needed on our board of directors in the Ambrose district. I don't consider myself a politician. I consider myself an organizer who's just happens to be elected official, right? But even when they're in that position, you have to work with the community. You have to have an inside-outside strategy, which means that, as an elected official, you're in the inside, but you're still communicating with the community about their needs and figuring out strategies to win, right? But beyond that, identifying future, elected officials that could represent us, beyond that, we always have to have a strong base in the community, period. So for Antioch, and I'm hearing, this could happen to us. Antioch doesn't have a tenants union. Get one. Start forming tenant associations with your neighbors. Do it. because this is the only form of protection that really lasts in these communities. It's not, us as nonprofits or organizations and groups, because unfortunately funds come and go, right? Like priorities change all the time. And what happens after that is, we leave these communities with that actual infrastructure to defend themselves, right? And so how do you defend yourselves? Forming tenant unions, forming tenant associations, doing tenant rights clinics, door knocking, talking to your neighbors, and continuously having an eye on the city council, because the minute you turn around, they start changing things, right? And so I think that's what's good about Concord right now, is that even though what's happened last night happened, they're still in position. I feel like they're still in position to bounce back, and fight back for this, and hopefully in the future they could reclaim that original 3%. But it's going to take a lot more organizing, a lot more infrastructure there to happen. And Antioch is no different from that, because they're just one city council member away from all that disappearing, or 2 or 3, right? And that could potentially happen. But if you have a strong base there, you could defend it.
All right. That's good. Solid.
And I won't take up so much time, but yeah, good advice from both our guests tonight. And I would just say, try to get in where you can fit in, get involved with a community organization. I think that's number one. Find something that you could do with some like-minded folks and work towards some sort of goal. And if you got to find something within housing and rental rights, find that. If you're going to find something to do with the unhoused community and maybe helping folks go out there and feed folks or supply them with supplies or stuff like that, by all means do that. But become part of a community organization and get involved in your community. And then you could take it to the city council and start working on policy and policy that's going to benefit whatever cause you're working for. So I'll leave it at that, because I know we're getting close. It's a little past 9 already, but I think it's important to find an organization to get involved with, to be part of your community.
100%.
I love that. Well, thank you. I saw Betty had to jump off. Thank you, Eduardo. Thank you, Frank. Thank you, Carlos, for helping host. And we'll do a quick round robin. What gets us going? I'll start. I'll say seeing injustices in communities and the struggles of families motivates me to fight for people that are afraid. Don Carlos, what motivates you to do what you do?
Just to keep people accountable, So, yeah.
Okay.
That would be a main thing for me.
Cool. Don Eduardo, what keeps your fight going?
Community. Like everything I do is for community. Whether it's my community or the larger community, it is the movement, right? Like that's what really motivates me, is community.
Most definitely. Don Frank.
It's a little tough after all that, but I'll agree with all of you. Definitely community, definitely seeing an injustice somewhere just really, it strikes that chord inside you, like, man, that's wrong. I need to do something about it. And then I would also say seeing others get up and get moving makes me want to be a part of that too. So if I feel like there's a big group of folks, I saw the folks, I was just sharing that video with Carlos of the action yesterday in Concord. If I saw that walking by me and I knew what it was about, I would jump right in with that, So seeing that definitely motivates me to seeing people in action.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. Speaking of actions, this Sunday, San Bruno, Berkeley, San Francisco, there's going to be a big ass march and rally. So if anyone wants to go and support and be part of this, you can follow, I believe it's Together We Stand, Brown Issues on their Instagram, and just check out the flyer and stand up for what you believe in for our community. So yeah, that's all I got. Thanks, y'all.
Awkward silence.
You want to close this out?
Carlos going to drop that beat, Carlos.
Yeah,
I know, right?
wait.
I stopped playing the beat. Remember, I used to play the beat. There's the music. It's time to go.
It was a good one.
It was.
Bring it back.
It was.
We need that beat.
We do.
That's what takes us away.
I'll get a new beat.
All
Anyway,
right.
thank
Well,
you.
Bye,
thank you.
y'all.
for tuning
Appreciate
in.
it, man. Bye, y'all.
Yeah, thank you for being on the show, man.
Yeah,
And
thanks for being
everybody
hosting.
out there, thank you all
Oh,
for
yeah.
tuning in. We're live every Wednesday, 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. If you're watching this obviously on YouTube, so please help us by liking, subscribing, and letting other people know about this, because we can't do it without you. So with that,
Raise
any
awareness.
last
Keep raising awareness.
words?
Much love to y'all and our
Any last-
communities.
See you next time.
Much love. All right. We're about to end this now. Peace out, everybody.